Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Thursday, August 7th. Derek Van Riper, Sears, Trevor May here with you on this episode. We try to solve the question, who has the best bullpen in baseball post-trade deadline? Eno wrote about that for The Athletic on Thursday morning. We'll see if we get some agreement across the board on his findings. Got some great mailbag questions to get to. Gavin Williams took a no-hitter into the ninth inning. You might be right. Your Gavin Williams prediction might just be happening over the course of the second half of the season. Hey, you never know. Still got some runway to get that one down. So I'm curious to see where that goes. We've got some baseball news you should know today, starting with Jen Pawol. She's going to be the first woman to umpire in an MLB regular season game. That's going to happen this weekend. She'll be behind the plate on Sunday. That debut is going to come Saturday as part of a Braves-Marlins doubleheader. I saw some great background stuff in the wind-up newsletter that Levi Weaver puts together for The Athletic, and it linked back to a story that Rich Rowley had actually written about Jen a year ago. She became a AAA crew chief and has kind of been on this path of making history for a few years now. The people that have worked with her have basically said, yeah, this is going to happen. Jen's going to be the first woman to get that opportunity at the big league level. There's some great history of some other women that have gone down that road and topped out in the upper levels of the minor leagues and run into all sorts of obstacles along the way. But this is exciting. We've seen women in the NFL, we've seen it in the NBA, and now Major League Baseball finally getting on board here in 2025 with the arrival of Jen Pawol.
Yeah,
I love it.
Exciting. I can't imagine wanting to have that job.
just generally, just wanting to be an umpire, like that. It takes a special type of person to be like, yeah, I'll take that heat. I'll take that
and
criticism.
Once you are
nonstop.
that type of person, I don't think that the gender matters much. You're just that kind of person. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know anything about her. I'm sure she's just ready to go toe to toe with anybody. It's not for the meek.
No, it is not. But looking forward to seeing that as the weekend arrives. Some other baseball news you should know. Michael King is going to be back in the rotation for the Padres on Saturday. I think that was the explanation for why did JP Sears go down? And I'm a little bummed by that. I think JP Sears is going to matter for the Padres at some point this year. And Trevor, one of my arguments about JP Sears, the trade deadline, was that he gets out of the hitter haven that is Sutter Health Park in Sacramento, but he also gets into an organization that's good at developing pitching, right? Working with Ruben Niebla should be a pretty big step up for JP Sears with that move to San Diego.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think the one thing JP does that is really underrated for him is just he takes the ball every 5 days. Like, the guy's a workhorse. He's always ready to pitch. There's a lot of value in that. He just stays off the IL and throws as many innings as he can. And I think that, one thing that doesn't necessarily happen very often with the A's in the big leagues is like learning new pitches or adding to arsenal in real time, like through the season. Sometimes they do it in the off season, but like it's pretty static. It can be pretty static, and he could benefit, I think, from tinkering a little bit more. And he's going to be in a organization that is more friendly to that, I think, and they're way more open to it. So, there's a lot of underlying stuff that maybe hasn't really reared his head yet. He's got the little bit of the homer problem and has his whole career. Like, I think they can help him with all that stuff. But I also agree that even in the form he is now, he is a innings eater, back of the rotation type of guy, like a guy with a good offense, especially. Like, he's a valuable player. He is a big league pitcher. I think it's a numbers game at this point. And I wouldn't surprise me one bit if he comes up and they have him do a little bit more of a swinging kind of role. I could see him doing maybe not the same type of value as David Peterson was last year in the playoffs, but like being the first guy to the bullpen in a short start, and going out and eating a bunch of innings, just because I think he's durable enough to be able to be that guy for a team that is going to go to the bullpen early anyways, right? With all the guys they have now. So like, I think he could bridge that really, really well in the playoffs or even in the stretch. If they get banged up starter wise or whatever. I think he's got a lot of value there. So I really like that pickup. I think he was a really underrated part of the trade.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it was an important piece to get that deal over the finish line, the one that sent Mason Miller to San Diego as well. The return of King is really big for that rotation, though, too. Top end is getting healthy, for San Diego. And I think, I hope that Michael King has been able to put this injury behind him. The rehab assignment was a little bit rocky, but back Saturday nonetheless.
I think if you also look at AJ Preller's moves at the deadline, he did, gather some rentals in Nestor Cortez and Ryan O'Hearn, but there was a lot of work being done on the 2026 Padres as well. So Sears, whatever his role is going on stretch this year, it may be more important next year when Cortez is gone and he's a 4 or 5 for them. And that's something that they needed, having traded away Ryan Bergert and some other guys. So, I think there's a little difference in short and long term for Sears. And in terms of what I would do and what I see as an opportunity with this arm, he has a really interesting mix of pitches that I think could be optimized better. One of the things that pops out, I know this is a joke on this podcast, and we talk about learn to code, do yoga, and learn a cutter, but I would love to see what a cutter did for Sears, something that was, on the fastball side of the 4 quadrants, but maybe less predictable than the 4-seam that he throws right now. And then he has this really interesting curveball. It's 80 miles an hour, and it has almost 0-0 movement. It's almost like a gyro curve. And I find that intriguing. I wonder what that pitch would be. So I would, if I was working with him, I'd be like, hey, you can obviously spin a sweeper. Let's look at the other 2 breaking balls. Let's look at a cutter. Let's see what you can keep separated, because there's a little bit of blend between his slider and his sweeper. So maybe what you end up doing is you end up axing that slider and you replace it with a cutter, and you develop the curve as a change of pace that really looks weird and maybe starts getting some results for you. So I would just tweak some of the pitches and kind of get a little more separation on some of them.
We've seen lefties of all different types have a lot of success this year too. So I think at some point, should injuries befall this rotation again, JP Sears will chew up some innings effectively for San Diego. Just a really quick flyby on this one. Chris Sale facing hitters on Thursday. He's eligible to come off the IL on the 17th of August. Probably going to need at least one, or the 19th of August, rather. He's going to need at least one rehab start, though, before he can come back. So good news as he tries to make it back and just kind of show that he's healthy before the end of this season. But, the victory lap opportunity, it actually might be there for your bold Gavin Williams prediction. He took a no-hitter into the 9th inning. Juan Soto took him deep to break up that no-no. Williams has actually been pretty good over the last 2 months, but you drill down to the last 30 days, he's 11th in the Fangraphs player rater during that span. For the season, he's still kind of in that 40 to 50 range once you take the relievers off of that list. What has been the difference over these last couple of months for Gavin Williams? Did he follow the advice? Did he actually start using that cutter more effectively?
Yeah, and I think what he's figured out is, at first he was like, oh, I have a cutter and I threw a couple of them a game. And then he was like, no, I have a cutter and I throw it 30% of the time. And you're like, that's a little bit much, dude. So what he's really, done in the last month is made it a part of his arsenal that's not necessarily the feature. He throws his 4-seam fastball and his curveball the most of his pitches. But the cutter's there sort of 10 to 20%, and I think that's an ideal usage. So I think it was, you have these little moments where it's like, I have a new toy, and then you're like, wait, I think I used it too much.
That's what happens.
I think it's, you get too comfortable, fall in love with a pitch, and it's like, nope, that changed the arsenal for the worse. It did some things that you didn't expect it to do.
Another way of saying it, like it's not the greatest pitch by Stuff Plus. It's like it's sort of the Logan Webby version of cutter, where it's like, it helps his arsenal put together, and he can locate it. It's the pitch he locates the best. But the problem is when you locate a pitch really well and you use it 30% of the time, but it doesn't have great Stuff Plus, then people are like, game plan for the cutter. And they're like, they start to anticipate the cutter in those counts where you need it. So you can't just, everybody else knows that's the pitch you command the best. And I'll hear 2-0 count. Well, you can't just always throw cutter in 2-0 counts because you can command it, because then people will anticipate it.
So we were talking yesterday about matchups and the difficulty of each division. And I think there's always a perception that the AL East is the toughest, that the two central divisions are the easiest places to pitch in terms of the strength of the opposing lineups. And maybe you start to adjust for some park factors and other things like that could get a little separation there. And it just made me think, okay, if the AL Central is still relatively down, then you still, with 2 months left, can actually make up a lot of ground on your ratios. More ground there probably than you can in other divisions. So Eno wanted to put some numbers behind this. Like, are we making assumptions that are true? Are we actually missing anything? And you pulled it together to see which division is actually the best, which one's the worst by WOBA, by WRC plus. And you looked at the standard deviation of WRC plus to account for the absolute kind of bottom feeders that you have in a couple of divisions.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I wasn't sure it was going to produce anything, but if you look at it, I think it does make sense. So the tightest division in terms of quality across the entire division is the NL East. And I think that's because the Marlins have been surprisingly good. And they've taken real strides this year on the hitting side. They always had some decent pitching. So that's the best division in terms of how tight is it from the top to the bottom. And that's meaningful, I think, because let's say, the biggest spread is the NL West. Now, the NL West looks really different if you're a pitcher on the Rockies or if you're a pitcher on the Dodgers. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of who you face and what you're facing, it's very different. And that's what the standard deviation tells you. The NL Central is very different if you're on the Cubs or Brewers than if you're on the Pirates. So you get a sense. And so the AL Central, it has the worst hitting across the board. And that's fairly well spread out through the division. So the AL East and the AL West are kings through this lens. And I think this is also interesting for our bullpen discussion later, because there are some teams that, took a pitcher that was a closer in one of those, other leagues and put them into, the lion's nest. So for Gavin Williams, I think some of this may be schedule related. And I think that's really tough also to think about when it comes to handing out hardware. I don't think that we maybe adjust for it enough. Sometimes it maybe it could be worth as many as, 20 points of ERA to be, as dominant in the AL East as you are in the AL Central.
But does that make you feel that much differently about Tarek Skubal? I mean, Trevor, you've pitched all over the league. You've seen different changes, different matchups, different schedule variations over the course of your career too. Could you feel that on a day-to-day basis when you were in the NL East compared to the AL Central? And at the time, if memory serves me right, the AL Central wasn't as weak offensively as it is right now, because the Royals, the Guardians, and the White Sox by WOBA are all bottom 5 teams right now. Yeah, they're all bottom 5 league-wide. I don't think they were all ever clustered at the bottom quite like that together a few years ago. But is that something you can actually feel day to day going through the season?
Yeah, I think so. Because it always come down to, especially for me, it was just like, who were the big damage guys? And for example, Kansas City never had a huge home run threat outside of Salvi a few years ago. That was just not their game, and it never has been. Same with Cleveland. Their pop guys were, Lindor didn't really get going, and that they had Jose Ramirez as well, but those guys didn't really start hitting lots of homers till a few years in anyways either. So it's there just wasn't more than one or two guys who were this guy is a legitimate power threat, gap guy, high production guy. It was a lot of we don't strike out, we get on base, we run. That's just how teams are built there, and there's something to do with Kansas City and the way that the park plays, and this was always.
They also
kind
don't
of
have
part
the
of
money to sign Juan Soto or whatever,
Exactly. So yeah, you definitely noticed it a little bit, or that maybe the lineups weren't as potent, and then there was a lot of flux where the teams were and the rebuilds and stuff. So the 5-6 on in the lineup was different every night, and so that comes down to it too. You just have a revolving door of players, and more teams in those divisions have those revolving your players. And I would say even in the best of years, probably we're middle of the road in terms of as a division. And that was probably the years that the Twins were carrying that load and being one of the best offensive teams in the league that brought it up. And I was on the team that was doing it, so I didn't have to face it either. But you definitely do notice the difference in the NL East. And then when you went and played the AL East, if you went on the East Coast trip, you faced 3 teams. You went like Tampa, Boston, New York or something, which I did once. Like, it's just a different, like the way you got prepared and the atmosphere of the place as well. It could be a culture shock in a lot of different ways. With more guys you got to worry about in the lineup, higher paid guys, in some cases legendary guys you watch when you're growing up, and then also you put yourself in Yankee Stadium in Fenway. I won't put Tampa in that group, but like, it's one of those things. So yes, you do notice it. It is something you're kind of just overall aware of, and then you just find yourself preparing a little harder, and it's hard sometimes to separate whether or not that's just because you don't face them as much and you don't know as much. There is a little bit of that, but there was also like there's more guys you have to worry about. They're just straight up is
a deeper lineup. Yeah, 5 or 6 problem bats instead of 2 or 3 at the top. Yeah. I think the related question I had for you, and this is kind of an extension of the conversation we had on Wednesday's show with Vinny Rottino. A lot of people are saying, what's going on with the Brewers? They don't have power. They have a good lineup. They wreak havoc, and this isn't new. Like that Royals team you mentioned, right? It was Salvador Perez was the big powered threat, but they made
a lot of contact.
They made a lot of contact. The Kane, Moustakas, Hosmer Royals were great at putting the ball in play. They ran well and they played great defense. So this team style build, this is not a new sort of build. So in what ways do even average big league hitters have ways to make life more difficult on a pitcher? Like what stresses you out as a pitcher and makes your job more difficult when you're just facing a group of guys that do things a certain way?
What a hitter, I think, if you're thinking along mindsets, is a great place to start. I think if a hitter can create a thought in a pitcher's head that they need to be, they're like passively creating, like, I need to be more fine, I need to get this pitch, I need to be very specific in where the pitch is going. The more often you need to do that, the more energy you're spending trying to do it. And then when you don't do it, which it's really hard, guys don't execute like that, like really fine as much as you would think they do. They miss and they get away with stuff. And if they're like, I can't do that, but in reality they're still fine. If you're constantly like getting success and still feeling like you're not doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, like that is the hitter winning. Even if they end up striking out. There was actually a great AB I was watching last night. A guy who's been really, really good for the Red Sox and no one's really talking about is Romy Gonzalez. He was facing Hunter Harvey, and Hunter Harvey's throwing 98, 99 with a 88 mile slider and a splitter, and he's got really good stuff. And Romy just kept fouling off these heaters at the top rail at 98, 99, and then like just getting enough of sliders. So he was just like, these aren't pitches that I can drive because he's locating them.
Fouling. I was going to say fouling.
So foul ball seems kind of valuable. Yeah.
He had no intent. Like he's like, I know I probably not going to drive that pitch. I'm not trying to because I'll miss it if that's what I do. But what I can do is get another pitch and see if he makes a mistake. And Hunter Harvey, to his credit, didn't make a mistake. He was dialed. And he was just hitting the edges, and Romy just kept fouling him off with 2 strikes. He ended up striking out, but instead of that guy who's got elite stuff when he is dialed in and is a punch-out pitcher, instead of him striking out 4 pitches, you make it 8 pitches. Like you still created a lot more havoc for that guy than you would have otherwise. And if all 3 guys do that, then a guy is out there, I'm dialed in, but now in his head, he's like, it doesn't matter if I'm dialed in. They're just going to keep making me throw pitches anyways. So like you feel kind of helpless. And that's, if you can make a pitcher feel helpless and not powerful and like in control, then the chances that you get that pitch that you're looking for, just one of those pitches is a big deal. It's funny. We're going to talk about this guy a little bit later, but I talked yesterday on my show about Devin Williams said 1 pitch got me. What was just 1 pitch? And that just drives fans crazy, right? They want you to be, especially right now with that team, they want you to be like everything's awful and whatever. But like if he gives ground and says, what could I do? Now he's effectively hurting his own confidence. He has to believe that it's just 1 pitch. He has to believe that. Yeah. Or his confidence will start to get shaken, and then he'll start making more mistakes. So he has to say that no matter how much you like, because he's trying to convince himself as well. He wants to make sure that that's where he stays, so that next time he goes out, next night, that he knows that if he just keeps making pitches, that eventually it will swing to the side. And that's the best you can do as a pitcher. So like that was an example, I think, of him trying to stay.
It's about the only answer you can give, really.
That's the only answer he had that was would satisfy his need to actually pitch well, then make fans feel good for one night. Because if he says that and then blows it again, he's just going to get on him again. So it doesn't matter what he says. Like he just like, I have to go out there and I have to be confident that even if I make a mistake, I'm going to be okay. And I can't be thinking about not making mistakes because then I'll make more.
What I think is potentially really interesting is we could maybe look at decay of stuff over the course of an inning and over the course of an outing. And I think as you pile up more and more pitches, fatigue obviously sets in. Your location's not as good when you're trying to be more fine. And I think you'd find that the teams that foul off and spoil pitches are very likely to take a pitcher's baseline stuff and bring it down and make it more hittable, to get those mistakes, to get something they can actually do damage with. And I think the other factor that I was kicking around was just being on base a lot and being aggressive on the base paths. That's an attribute of that Royals team several years ago. It's an attribute of the present Brewers. Again, other teams that don't necessarily have as much thump are creating runs on the base paths that way. Like, how stressful is that to also kind of layer on to a team full of guys that can take quality at bats and spoil pitches like that?
That's awful, especially if you are terrible at dealing with that stuff, or you're, I don't know, 6'5" and slow to the plate and have a terrible pickoff move and generally not great throwing catchers. Like, you're just giving that to them. And then if that team then also has Terrence Gore, who's going to come in every single time you walk the leadoff guy and steal second and third no matter what you do, and steal six bases in his career off you. Like, and then there's a sack fly and you lose. Like, that may have happened to me.
Sounds like someone specific.
Sounds like we hit a nerve.
I may have thrown a wild pitch and then tried to beat him home, and he even beat me to home plate. Like, I was even there in time, and I was running as hard as I could. So it didn't matter. Like, I felt like there was nothing I could do, and that is why the Royals won the World Series in 2015, because they just did that to everybody, and they didn't strike out either. So you couldn't count on limiting the kind of putting the running game to bed just by striking everybody out because they couldn't move anybody. Like, you couldn't count on that because they wouldn't do that either. So it was just, you went in knowing that today was going to be a lot of hard work, and that's what they did. And I think that's something that I think the Brewers do fairly well. Like, teams go in, they're not like, oh, this team's going to score 15 runs. I mean, they're not worried about that, but they're worried about, like, I'm going to be more tired after today than I usually am, and I don't want to do that. Like, I'm tired all the time anyways. There is value there. If you can create that situation, then you should, even if it's running the bases or just being annoying. Being annoying goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, just to to go back to that first graph that we put up, Milwaukee does have the best WRC plus that they've had in this run. So, what we're talking about doesn't really pull away from that NL Central WRC plus, right? Like, they have a 106 WRC plus. Milwaukee is not the reason the NL Central is fifth out of the six divisions, right?
No, I mean, the Pirates are the main culprit there. Like, the Pirates are amazingly bad.
The Reds are also not great away from home, so they may not be the greatest offense. Some of that is papered over by their home park.
But when you look at a chart like that and you're like, oh, well, Paul Skeens pitches for the Pirates, not against the Pirates, so he doesn't get that layup matchup in the division. Right. What he's doing becomes more impressive.
But, Skubal, just to answer your other question about Skubal, like, I haven't found out yet what I'm voting for, so I can talk about it. And when I do find out, then I have to stop talking about it. But let's say I had an AL Cy Young vote today. My process is to begin with wins above replacement, but more as a gathering mechanism. And from my first glance, I'd be like, well, Skubal has 5.7 WAR, Garrett Crochet 4.8. That's almost a full win, so that would resonate with me. I'd be like, okay, I've got Skubal in the front. How can I make an argument for Crochet? Well, then I would like, wow, the ERA is really close. 218 for Skubal, 224 for Crochet. And then you go over, I do try all the different wins above replacements because they're all different and they all take different things. And BP has the most in it, and they have Crochet ahead. And that's probably because having a 2.24 ERA in that park, in that division, is maybe just slightly more impressive even than how impressive Tarek Skubal's been. So I would say that Crochet versus Skubal right now is maybe a toss-up. And that might be surprising to hear. But, I mean, even if you just go by ERA, they're very close. So I think you start to talk about difficulty of schedule. You maybe even like it's 30 starts or whatever. Maybe you go through and do a little bit of that like college football, college basketball type like good win, analysis where you're like, that was a big win. He went into the Lions' den here and he did that, and sort of maybe even rank some of their wins and be like, he had like 5 patsy wins where he like went into Pittsburgh and dominated a lineup that, wasn't really that hard. And he had 5 really hard wins, so like, I don't know. You could kind of go through it like that. One reason I like to keep the baseball prospectus numbers in there though is that they account for the most things. They have umpire in there and they have all sorts of stuff in there. So to some extent, you could just use that as your one number. But the way that I just don't trust pitching WAR generally. So the way that I get around not trusting pitching WAR generally is just kind of looking at all of them.
Yeah, I think shopping around a little bit, looking at the different versions of WAR is good. I think the number that jumps off the page for me, it's just something you might see on the back of a baseball card. Look at the whip difference. The base runner suppression right now, Tarek Skubal, 0.83 whip, Garrett Crochet, 107. A 0.83 whip, that's getting into that DeGrom sort of territory over a full season. I think that would be one of the separators for me if we had to make that call right now.
Agree.
Then that's worth looking at.
He's a couple 3-run homers away from having a 1.5, like genuinely. So that is one thing with Skubal. There's just like 3 or 4 crooked numbers in there randomly where he gave up 3 or 4 in an inning, just because the nature of the pitches he throws. He'll give up like 4 barrels or 3 barrels in an inning and then nothing for the rest of the game because he just switched what pitch. Like he just switched it up a little bit and there's a little bit of guessing.
Such a great breaking ball and such a great changeup. It's like, oh, okay. They're looking for something. I'll just do something else.
Yeah.
What's your guys' take on Skeens relative to the NL Cy Young right now? I mean, the traditional things that the voters used to care about are not there, but that's not really his fault. He continues to pitch exceptionally well. He's got a 2.02 ERA, 0.92 whip this season. I mean, it's strikeout and walk rates on the same level as Crochet, so not quite at the Skubal level, but ratios are phenomenal. Does it matter that Paul Skeens pitches for the Pirates for the Cy Young? My argument would be that it shouldn't. His case should be based on his own merits and not on the team context that's dragging down what would be otherwise a fantastic season.
I could tell you one flavor of WAR that does say it's a big deal.
Which flavor?
Baseball Prospectus has Zach Wheeler and Christopher Sanchez with a full win more above replacement than Paul Skeens.
It's funny. Even any counting stats at all, Wheeler still has Skeens in pretty much everything. And so it's like, I can't say that, this is even a huge difference in who's more dominant or whatever. Like Wheeler's just doing everything kind of a little bit better. And he's on
just ERA that is the big difference.
It's just ERA.
ERA is maybe the least valuable number, really.
And he's got a 2.64. This is Wheeler with a 0.92 whip. Also, like he's just not allowing very many base runners. So like it's just sometimes the runners that are on are scoring or he's not stranding them enough. But that's a thing that's like, again, what do we?
And it's also home run rate, which is something that DRA will adjust for, right?
Yeah.
Zach Wheeler pitches in Philadelphia, and Paul Skeens pitches in Pittsburgh. And yes, Skeens has home run suppressing stuff, but I think to some extent there got to be, if we look through the Wheeler home runs, there's got to be a couple of them that were Philadelphia specials.
Yeah, still lots of time for this one to play out. But I think the Cy's are a great battle this year. The NL Rookie of the Year award is one that's wide open. Bunch of candidates from that Brewers team. It could be Isaac Collins. It could be Chad Patrick if he comes back up. It could be Mizorowski. Could be someone we haven't even seen yet.
Seems like it's all wrapped up in the American League.
Yeah. kind of feels that way, doesn't it?
A big boy named Nick Kurtz is spanking homers left and right in Sacramento. I almost said Oakland.
Yeah, you almost did. I mean, the only way Nick Kurtz would fall short would be an injury and then Roman Anthony just going off for 2 months at this point, right? Like, I don't think Carlos Narvaez, even though by WAR he's been great, I don't think he would like take over that spot. Jacob Wilson, I guess, could if he gets healthy, but I think Nick Kurtz is in the driver's seat.
Yeah, the National League is much more wide open. I like Drake Baldwin a lot. If they keep using him as a DH, it won't be good for his WAR, but it'll help his counting stats. I mean, if he ends up, hitting 280 with a 350 plus on base percentage and 15, 16, 17, 18 homers, it could be him.
Yeah, he's having a great year. People aren't paying attention really because they suck, but.
So let's get back to some other pitching topics here. We were going to throw this at you, Trevor, because it's been a weird week since the trade deadline. A lot of the relievers that have been on the move have just been off to bumpy starts. Even a couple guys that got promoted to new roles have had blown saves. Randy Rodriguez missed an opportunity. Jake Bird got demoted already. Like just all sorts of goofy stuff in the first. Mason Miller getting turned around on 104 that Lourdes Gurriel Jr. hit out.
103.9, the hardest pitch ever thrown for a home run, but like a mile an hour, almost 2 miles an hour.
I mean, that was unbelievable. And it kind of traces back to this question, like, what's different about pitching in the ninth inning? We'll drill into some of the other related questions of being moved at the trade deadline that I think could also make things a little bit uncomfortable for the first couple of weeks, perhaps. But the ninth inning specifically, for guys that weren't closers before that are closing, like Randy Rodriguez and a few others, like, what's different about that role?
Well, one of the biggest, there was always that conversation, right, about the opener and all outs are equal the same or created equal, and that's just inherently false. Like, it's just not true. It matters. The reason that every out in a game has a different leverage index is a great example of the fact that how much time do you have left in the game to undo a mistake? And that is what it comes down like how if you blow it in the bottom of the ninth against a team, there's no time, you lose. Getting walked off, there is no time to come back.
Or like a 2-run lead in the first, okay, whatever.
So I believe the hardest,
oh boy,
for many reasons, the hardest 3 outs to get in a game are the bottom of the ninth when you are on the road getting a close. Say because 1, you're in hostile territory. 2, you are not sleeping where you usually sleep. You're traveling. There's all kinds of stuff, right? And then also,
there's no time to undo the error.
And there's no time to undo a single mistake. It's a walkout. It's over, and then you got to deal with that. And so, this is genuinely, I believe, what is the biggest thing. Blowing that game looks the worst to everybody. It just looks the worst. It's the most embarrassing. It is the most damaging to your confidence, and no one wants to have situations happen where their confidence is damaged and that sows any sort of doubt in the head. That's human. Nobody wants that. And so I think that the pressure just inherently goes up, and if you get too much pressure on yourself and put too much pressure on yourself, then every little pitch seems massive, and then when that gets out of control, then you, like I said before, start to make more mistakes. And then here we are. And then you add, like, for example, if you're David Bednar, you're worried about what? Pirates fans forever. Like, Pirates fans are going to get on me. I have some room here to figure things out in real time. We're always under 500. We're never near going to the playoffs. Whatever. You go to the Yankees, you don't get grace at all. You're going to go and you better be good right away. And I said this when that happened. Like, give them a couple days, guys. You just got the Colorado Rockies and the Pirates. Like, they are not used to this. Give them one outing. It's going to be tough. And then, of course, first one, just all hell broke loose. And it was completely obvious to me that was going to happen. So, but the reason the ninth inning is so much harder. And one thing I got to say, too, is I think Yohan Duran has handled it very well in Philly, because that's a different place, too. The fact that the internet's like, this is such a cool walkout. And you're like, dude, he's been doing that for 4 years.
Yes, but I think that was brilliant that he got to bring that with him, because,
shout out to Dustin Morse and the media team over at Minnesota, because they initiated
very nice
of
them.
Here it is.
They're good over there.
Yeah. They're very good over there. They're like, this is awesome. We worked really hard on this too, so we wanted to keep living. And then
it's so
we've never had anything like this. It's awesome.
It's important for him too, though, because Suarez has a good one in San Diego. Like I love these walkouts, and I talked to Brian Wilson about this. It ties into exactly what you're talking about confidence and how important confidence is in the ninth inning. I was like, Brian, it's an act, right? Do you remember Brian Wilson was like a WWE. Crazy person out there?
You are a pro wrestler.
Yeah, and he was like, yes, it's an act. I was like, I can't believe you're telling me this. He's like, dude, I could throw a knuckleball out there, not because it's any good, but because they're like, oh crap, it's Brian Wilson and he's stomping around the mound and he's going to throw it really hard. And then you throw a knuckleball and oh my gosh, it works because they didn't expect that. And he's like, that's why you have this bravado, you have this act, you have this whole thing. And then I've been just laughing about, like, do you remember the Papel face, the Papelbon face, and the Kimbrel arm and all these things? Like, they're all part of the sort of the confidence game, the sort of being like, okay, I'm locking in and I'm also like trying to demonstrate my dominance, to you in some sort of physical form, So like the horns for Edwin Diaz, it's fun and it's for the fans, but it's also for Edwin Diaz. He comes out.
And the other team knows what the horns mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like it's and the Hell's Bells. Like Mark Melanson used to wait he'd wait behind the wall. I watched him do this in San Diego until the word thunderstruck was said once. Like he wouldn't run out and tell he timed it. And I've heard anecdotally that he loves WWE or was really into it as a kid. So like he did this on purpose, but it is a show. It is a character in a lot of ways. I've done this pod with you guys for over a year now. You know that I'm like to talk and I'm laugh and like to joke around. But if you watch me run out to close the game, that looks like a different person. And that's how I had to be. I couldn't be this and pitch like that. I couldn't.
Yeah, I generally, like, I've noticed that. We've watched a few clips from when you play it, and I'm like, it does look like a different guy. Like, sure, it's you. Like, I recognize you, but your demeanor, your facial expressions, your body language are completely different than the person you are on camera. Night and day. It's like you flip a switch.
Yep, you have to flip a switch.
That makes sense. I mean, and I think there's probably a lot of different personality types around the game, too. There's probably some people that are just tightly
like
wound.
that all the time.
Sergio
Romo, same thing. He'd be like, eighth inning, biting nails, quiet. Ninth inning, don't talk to him. It was crazy, but like that's how it worked, and he was so good at it. It was incredible.
One more note. I see the cryon change. One more note.
I just added a new cryon. It's not. Keep going. You're doing
One
great.
more note on this is I wonder. I swear to God, the last time I did this query, I looked this up. It was a different result. I swear the last time I looked at swing rates by inning, people swung less in the ninth. But I just looked at the StatCast era, and the ninth inning has the highest chase rate. I mean, the extra innings have the highest chase rate, but in the regular 9, the ninth inning has the highest chase rate and the highest zone swing rate of any inning. And if you tighten it to just like sort of tying run situations, it's the same trend. So either I got it wrong the first time I did it, or maybe there has been some impact, because what has changed over the last 7 years is really this whole closer thing has been like taken to another level by the sort of media departments and stuff that we're just talking about with Duran and stuff. Like that has really come on in the last 5 years. I don't really remember it being as big a deal. Like maybe there was a couple closers that had a song or something, but then now we start doing the camera lights and the like rotating LEDs in the stadiums and stuff.
It helps that every stadium now has those. Like there was only a couple with them early, and that's
in terms of like
everyone upgraded
to do that.
Well, like also they're like cheaper to run. They're like way less electricity. Okay. There's like a ton of benefits to do it just for operational things. But
like, I wonder if that's had some effect on the psychology of the hitter.
100%.
That'd be crazy if this changed. I have to go look back at my old analysis, but this makes a lot of sense though. To think that batters would be most aggressive and chase outside the zone in the ninth inning makes the most sense to me, because you're like, got to do something. It's the game's on.
You got to flip
got to
it,
do
right?
something.
Yep.
You got to flip the momentum.
You got to make it happen.
And how do you get a guy with really great stuff? You got to take him deep. Like they're also going out there like, we're not going to string 4 hits against this guy.
Right. That too.
We have to hit a solo homer, so guys are taking that chance, and then hitting is also switched that way too. So these guys are like hitting the ball hard is the way to do it, and trying to grind out a guy who throws 102 with the nicest slider I've ever seen. Just that's not sustainable, and we don't have enough guys to do it. So I'm going to try to hit that solo shot, tie the game, and then get rid of all that momentum they just built with him running out on the field, because you have to counteract it. You just have to. But it's also crazy that it's taken so long to get here to where everyone's doing this, because what are the most iconic things? What couple of the most iconic things we remember about Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman? It's them running out to their songs.
Right, exactly.
Like, why have we not tried to?
Why did it take that long? Yeah.
Enter Sandman.
No, they're very special. They're very
It was just
special.
the cutter. That had nothing to do with like, no, it's an iconic song. Everyone's like, oh,
and I also
crap,
think
here comes Mo.
Think about Edwin Diaz's career. Why is Edwin Diaz such a great closer with such poor command? Because most of the time he comes out to that song. Everyone's like, oh my God, I got to do something. I got to get to a fastball early. I got to do something. And then his command isn't a big a deal. That one bad year, it just steamrolled where people just weren't as afraid anymore. And they were like, you know what? He doesn't have good command. I'm just going to take some pitches here. And then he was like, God damn, now I have 3 guys on, and like now a single can win the game, you know? So it's like, you know, there could be a house of cards there a little bit, but I think this is why you might find that stuff matters more than command in the 9th inning role, because you get a guy with huge stuff, you get him in there, he has the confidence, he has everybody behind him, he has the lights shining, and the other team is like, oh God, what do we do now?
Go look at Duran's command. Just that is everything that he just said is true. He's like 56% first pitch strike rate, which is comically low. So you shouldn't be able to get away with that. But if you throw a splitter at 98, you can get away with that.
Right.
Yeah, it's a 94 location plus with a 123 stuff plus number for Joan Duran. It's pretty good.
Mason Miller's like that. Edwin Diaz is pretty close. Yeah, like a lot of guys like that.
Mason Miller, you know, it's fastball slider. It's just an unbelievable combination with those two pitches. But like, what do you do if you're trying to hit Mason Miller? It's almost 50-50. It's like 54% fastball, 44% slider, something like that. So
I wonder if I might just sit slider, dude.
Yes.
I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, guess.
He doesn't really like just go... He doesn't go slider ever, though. Like, he's always going to throw a fastball.
He
did last night, yeah. But like, that is... As soon as he becomes that guy, though, that's when he's going to be like unreal, where he goes up and goes, flips the slider over, strike one, throws a nasty one, guy swings at it, and they're like, oh, well, now as soon as he throws slider first pitch for a strike, and he's okay doing that, and then it's 1-0, misses and throws another one, that's a strike. Like, it's just you're done. But like, he's not quite. I don't think he doesn't have the experience quite yet to get there, though he is getting better with his slider.
Yeah, he went somewhere to someone. He went slider 0-2, 103, top of the zone, away, done.
Yeah, there's just no way that you can get to that if you're not sitting 100% on it. You can't.
So since the live stream last week, Eno has been trying to determine who has the best bullpen in baseball at this point. We've wrestled with 3 teams as the primary contenders: the Yankees, the Padres, and the Mets. And I'm curious, upon further research, Eno, have you changed your opinion? Have you come up with a new hierarchy for league's best bullpens?
Well, you know, the problem with these sort of enterprises is you have to, what does best mean? I mean, I know that seems like semantics and it's dumb, but like, what does best mean? Because I ran it for projected ERA, and using Stuff Plus, using the Oopsie projections, the best bullpen in baseball is the Seattle Mariners. They're going to have the lowest ERA. But I don't know that ERA is the best judge here, because they play in the best pitcher's park in baseball. And oh, look, the Mets, who play in the second or third best pitcher's park in baseball, have the second best ERA. And the Padres, it's pretty pitching friendly as well. So, you know, that's why I put wins above replacement on there as well. And for those of you that are fans of a couple teams that are outside of this graphic, if you look at wins above replacement, which has a little bit of a park adjustment in it, the Phillies and the Blue Jays should be ahead of the Brewers and the Yankees. And so those are your 7, and depending on what your rubric is for how you're going to judge them in the end as best, you could really choose among these. I did, I sort of weaseled my way out in the article and didn't anoint one best. But if you make me say who's best, I think right now I'm going to go with Padres. They had the best stuff of any team. When I looked at it, they had the best stuff. Actually, they had second best stuff to the Mets. But in terms of projected ERA, they're first. They had better command than the Mets group by location plus. They had better velo. So, and a lot of that Mets stuff plus number is relying on Tyler Rogers, which, hey, I believe it to some extent, but also 126 stuff plus on a unique pitcher that doesn't have that many comps. You kind of put a little bit of an asterisk next to that. I mean, it's how many Submariners are there? I looked in the StatCast era, the closest to Tyler Rogers' release point is Adam Simber, who I think still had like 6 inches difference or something.
It's so weird because when you look at Rogers, the sub 20% K rate, it's been that way every year since 2021. It's not a lot of swinging strikes. It's just extremely weak contact. And last 2 years now, he's got a 2% walk rate. He's not going out there and just hurting himself with free passes. I mean, you can't square him up for a homer. He's not putting you on for free, and you're probably not even hitting the ball that hard in play.
You can string together hits against him, though.
You can.
So, okay. So
do that.
Thinking about a few things we talked about on today's show, is a lineup built more like the Brewers, a more difficult matchup for Tyler Rogers? Like, do the Brewers present more problems for Tyler Rogers than the Brewers present for, say, like Mason Miller?
I bet actually it's a little bit more advanced than we can do right now, because I bet it's a swing path issue. I bet you flat swing paths can handle Rogers a little bit, because it's almost like the pitch is coming up at you.
Yeah, everything is a ride pitch, even his slider.
Yeah.
Or functions that way, and swings that handle ride better probably handle him better.
That's what I would expect.
And there's not that many of those guys, frankly. There's less of those guys that handle down better.
Yeah.
If I do.
Yeah,
yes.
so
I actually don't know if that's
the bigger swing tilt
true,
guys would have a hard time against him. So I can actually.
But that makes sense, because then you're neutralizing some of the best power bats in the game. Yeah. Because a lot of those guys have that path.
Right. I've done this where I've looked at the teams and looked at their tilt as a team, but the difference between the highest tilt and the lowest tilt is 35 with the Dodgers and Tigers and 30 with the Marlins and Brewers. So in fact, to answer your question, the Brewers would probably have a problem for it. But my point is that the player-to-player spread is much bigger. We're talking about, there are guys who have like a 22 swing path and like a 40, right? So when you start summing it up by team, you kind of lose some of it. You lose some of the intricacies, But like, I guess what you'd want to ask is there somebody on the Brewers that has some power and a flat swing? That might be like matchup might be the question, but. I do think that the Brewers, if they generally have flatter swings than the rest of the league, probably would have a better time against Tyler Rogers.
And just thinking about the lower K rate approaches too.
Yeah, that's
good call on the ranges too. Alejandro Kirk is 22 and Riley Green's 40. Those are the
there you go. I nailed it.
So that makes a ton of sense.
But it's got to be a lot harder, thinking about it from the matchups perspective, Trevor. If you had a guy like Kirk and a guy like Green hitting next to each other in the lineup, where you're locating and how you're trying to execute your pitches is completely different from one at-bat to the next. So I think it's another way in which different types of hitters can be put together in a lineup. And if you did it with even two guys on the same side of the plate, you could still create that difficulty without having to go lefty-righty, righty-lefty.
Exactly. Yes, that is. I think that's where we're going. I don't think we're quite to getting to the point where we're using the stats in that way, but those matchups are made difficult for that reason. Or if you have a for example, like a high ride guy who just like lives at the top of the zone, or you have like a Cade Smith just throwing fastballs up just over and over and over again, and you have two guys that with flatter swings than a guy who's a lefty or whatever with a lower swing. Let's use the Tigers for example, because they're swapping guys out all the time. You can put a guy with a flatter swing in between them. Now you have 3 guys with flat swings facing a guy who's going to throw high heaters, and he's got to figure out a way to do that. I'm pretty sure that the Blue Jays did this to me at one point because I had to face Kirk and Teoscar Hernandez, the guys who've handled heaters up, and George Springer all like back to back to back, and they pinch hit somebody who also hit high heaters, and they were just on top of it. I think Bo Bichette was in there too. He gets flat. So it's like, I was like, what's happening? But in reality, those guys' swings matched up with my stuff and what I was going to do pretty well. And one of the pinch hitters in there was in that, they saw that and was going for it. So, but it's funny that you mentioned that too, because the same thing works on the bullpen side. And I think the Mets, for example, have more diversity to mess with lineups in that way. More so than maybe, I think that you're right with San Diego having maybe the best pound for pound 5 guys in, Estrada, Morihone.
They don't have as much fun. Adam
they
is
don't
probably
have as
the
funk.
funkiest.
Maybe with Adam's the funkiest, but like at least there's a lefty in there. But it's all power. Like, oh my god, these guys are good. But over in New York, it's like Brooks Raley's a lefty for certain guys, but then Gregory Soto will come throw power stuff at you, and they got Ryan Stanek throwing the 5th. Or they got Helsley straight over the top. And then they got Rogers who's 83 from below. And then they got
Edwin Diaz has a really weird release point.
And he's weird. And he's on top of you. He's 7.5 feet of extension, which is still 99%.
But it's not over the top. It's like 7.5
and then he's throwing sidearm.
Sidearm-ish,
with pseudo ride. Like it's really hard to face teams like that when they can match you. Anything you do, they can match you. And I think that's what Stearns did so well there.
I think the Mets have the best argument for
maybe they have more situations in which they match up well, at least right now with no injuries. Like
this is really
Garrett. So like
this is really important. I think that it's already in the game because we saw 3 years ago that Dave Roberts said that he pinch hit Austin Hedges instead of Miguel Vargas or any other player that was on his bench because it was not Austin Hedges. It was Austin Barnes. And he used Austin Barnes against Josh Hader, and he said it was because of swing path. And it was because, and we can look back now, we have this data, and we can see that Austin Barnes has a flat swing, and we know that Hader lives at the top of the zone with a kind of a pseudo-ride fastball, right? So we have seen this already on the pinch hit level. Now, I think it's just hard to take your traditional, well, I want my best hitters at the top of the lineup and I want to go lefty righty. And then, I also want to alternate swing paths. It's like at some point you don't have enough personnel.
It's more of a pinch hit thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's more of a pinch hit thing.
Yeah.
Or when to use a pitcher. So now you're saying, they've got 3 guys that are huge tilt guys coming up. It's time for Tyler Rogers.
Yeah, that's going to factor in more now. I think so.
Yeah, that's the level of in-game adjustment that I think we're seeing at this point. So interesting things to think about here. And as you said, how you define best bullpen is probably going to shape who you would actually choose. I think that mix of different looks, I think about that Rays clock image from a few years ago all the time. They had guys from almost every available arm slot to cover up the face of the clock. That's, I think, something most teams are trying to do as far as how they build their bullpen. If you can't have all flamethrowers, elite stuff guys, at least you've got different things you can do to just keep hitters really uncomfortable. Got a few mailbag questions here. First one came from the Discord. Bitcloud wanted to know, Devin Williams has had an enormous spike in chase contact rate. There isn't anyone remotely comparable to his whiff rate overall with that level of out-of-zone contact. What could explain that?
I have a little bit of theory. I looked at all of his different velos and movement numbers and usage numbers, and he's throwing the changeup among basically the slowest he's ever thrown it and with the most drop. Now, that doesn't sound terrible. Those are those are in a vacuum might be good things. Oh, you saying he's throwing it nastier? What's the problem? I think because it's slower, it has bigger differential off the fastball, and because it's dropping more, it has bigger differential off the fastball. And so I think either some guys are actually sitting on that nasty change. I know that sounds crazy because everyone's like, we all decided it's the nastiest change, but sitting on something, anticipating something improves your outcomes on it. It absolutely does. I don't know. I haven't seen a study that really nails what that number is because it's really hard because you're talking about the in-game situations. Like you can't really do this at Driveline. You know,
can't really collect the data very effectively on this. Oh, so were you sitting changeup there? Oh yeah, actually, I was
and
sitting
the hitter's
changeup
never
there.
gonna tell you. Never gonna tell you. You know. So like if you did it in Driveline, you'd be like, okay, you hitter sit this, and the pitcher you throw this. Like, I still don't think that's recreating the like atmosphere, like Yankee Stadium closing out a game. You know?
No, because like you're not supposed to know that I'm sitting on that pitch.
Right. Yeah, that too. Like, who knows what? Yeah. But I think it's just a little bit easier to tell when the changeup's coming. And since he hasn't really reduced his usage of the changeup, it's a little bit more possible to sit on the changeup. And so I think it's just easier to tell his pitches apart right now than it has been in the past. So if I was coaching him, I would be, and I don't know how possible this is because his changeup has unique mechanics. He really turns it over. But I would be like, if I gave a cue to Devin Williams right now, I'd be like, can you just throw the crap out of that changeup? Can you just throw it as hard as you can? Like, don't worry about shape. Just throw it as hard as you can. I mean, she might be doing already, but.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think he can't, like, I don't think he's going to get enough velo for it to start functioning like a power changeup. I think you're right, though. It's just being identified earlier. So there's something slightly different now. Very similar. I don't think it's popping like a curveball would be. Like that would be a thing that people.
Or could he throw a sinker that like disguised it better? Yeah,
exactly. So he's only thrown 2 pitches. So in the past, he's thrown like a cutter like 10 times in a year. So it's like every once in a while, I'll just mix one in. So like it's just something that they know is on the sheet.
But that doesn't look like a changeup at all. Like maybe the sinker kind of goes in the direction of the changeup, and like maybe.
I don't even know, and I'm trying to look right now to see the spin axis real quick on his 4-seam fat. Yeah, no, he's got more of a chew spin. He's not really a supinator. Obviously, he can pronate. He pronates the crap out of his changeup. So when you have a true, he could throw like a true classic, like just 2-seam fastball that has some run. Also, he's not throwing his 4-seam. He doesn't throw as hard, right? He used to throw 97. Now he's throwing 94. 93.
Yeah, but he's had a good success at 94 for the last 3 years. So, like, I agree with what you're saying, but that's the difference between last year and this year is not those.
And honestly, the fastball itself is performing the same. It's still got high whiff. What I'm saying is, if they sit on a changeup, their chances of getting and fouling off a fastball as it continues to go down in velocity are higher. Yeah. So they're more confident sitting on changeups, meaning I can adjust to a fastball late, especially if they're seeing changeup like closer to out of the hand than they ever have before, which. That's the only way to hit a pitch like that consistently below the zone, even when he's making good ones and foul it off or put it in play.
Guess right.
You have to see it early, guess right, and then also see it early and commit to it and not be fooled as much by changeup. Add all of that to the fact that he now plays in Yankee Stadium. He's in the best hitting division in the league. And so that the things that, I mean, it's not like, where the Brewers play is not a place where balls fly out of that place. I've seen all kinds of stuff happen there. So it's not like it's the most pitcher-friendly park, but when you're facing the Cardinals and the Cubs, teams that who have generally just tried not to strike out very much, but don't have a ton of pop generally, and so they're used to hitting gap power, and like that's the type of lineups you're facing. And he's got such good stuff; he's getting swing and miss either way. Now we have guys who are doing damage on mishit pitches more often, and you only need 2 or 3 of those to happen to you in a year to give up 8 more runs. So
think about
which I think has happened.
Facing him. If a righty facing him in New York has that short porch out there. He can let the ball travel a little bit further, and still maybe take him out. Like, what didn't Alonso take him out? Oppo?
He's given up a couple that were like, dang, that sucks.
Thanks for bringing that one up.
5-ish runs.
Sorry to bring that one up, but
last year, yeah.
I'm just saying, the right approach against him might be let the ball travel so that you could get that extra fraction of a second to tell the difference between the two. And now that he's 94, not 97. You still might have a chance to do some damage, Oppo, with that 4-seam. And he's in the park now where, a righty going Oppo on the 4-seam is, even more enticing.
Exactly. So free agent at the end of the year, looking at the stuff relative to the last few years, it hasn't fallen off that much. Probably still a closer somewhere in 2026 and maybe for a few years beyond that. Would the Yankees give him a qualifying offer? I'm kind of assuming yes, but it's not a guarantee, is it?
No,
if I know Devin,
it's not a guarantee.
If I know Devin, I bet you they would bank on him wanting to go find a deal, because I know he wants to. That's 100%. He wants to go do a multi-year deal. If it's not with the Yankees, then he's fine with that. He does want one. I'm 100% confident that he's never said anything. I just can tell. I mean, he got the facial hair thing changed, guys. When the guy wants something, he wants something. So I bet you, and if they feel really confident in that, they will be like QO. So they'll just so they know he won't take it, and they'll get the pick. Like that's kind of what that's used for now.
Here are the top reliever salaries that they got in free agency. Edwin Diaz, $20 million, 20.4. Josh Hader, 19. Tanner Scott, 18. If Tanner Scott gets 18, I think Devin Williams can get 18.
I would think so. It's a longer track record of success than what Tanner Scott had before he cashed in.
If they still like that stuff plus number, like they still think the stuff is good, they'll have some sort of plan. Where like Raisel Iglesias got 14.5, but that was a little bit while ago. Kirby Yates has 13, but that was like a 1-year deal. Carlos Estevez, I think he's better than Carlos Estevez. He's better than Jeff Hoffman. Right? So
yeah,
I think it's like 3 for 60 or 4 for 75 or something.
I would not give him 4 for 75.
So you give him a little more, but do the 3 years.
I'd give him the Tanner Scott. Yeah. What was the Tanner Scott deal? It was like 3 and 54 or something, right?
No, it's 4 for 72, I think.
Jesus.
Well, they're the Dodgers. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. So which is, for all intents and purposes, a 3 for 54 for everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe
they could just do the extra year because it literally does not matter to them.
I can see 3 for 60.
Yeah. All right. We'll see how it all plays out down the stretch. And, the next 2 months in October, all that will matter. October, assuming the Yankees get there. A lot of people say they're not. I don't think they're crashing out that hard, but just my opinion. Question from Sierra 6. How do we view George Kirby in comparison with Joe Ryan? Both are command artists without overwhelming stuff. I think Ryan is due for some regression too. I actually, at this point, like Ryan a little bit more from a fantasy perspective, guys, because there's been more swing and miss consistently. And I think if I had to project out the next 2 to 3 years, even though Kirby gets to do it in one of the most pitcher-friendly environments in baseball for his home starts, I prefer Joe Ryan at this point, but it's a small difference. But what say you guys about the long-term outlooks of these two pitchers?
That's I've never thought of comparing these two guys, frankly, just because I do agree on their command first, but I do think there's elements of possible great stuff. I think Joe Ryan's sweeper his breaking ball is absolutely ridiculous sometimes, to the point where I'm like, I don't know how you're physically doing these things. But I also understand that, his nothing really jumps off the page numbers wise, and kind of the same thing with Kirby. I think Kirby is a little bit different of a pitcher in a way that he I believe watching him pitch that he messes around a little too much. He likes the idea of getting everyone with every pitch. He kind of Darvishes a little bit, where he's like, I'm gonna have 7 pitches just because I can and I want to, and that's how I want to be a pitcher, even if that doesn't make him the best version of himself. Which is frustrating to watch as a guy who watches pitching sometimes, because there's commitment, there's some stubbornness there, but you can't argue also that he's had success. It's not like he's not good. I just think he should be a Zach Wheeler type. He should be, but he's just not. So, but in terms of regression, I don't see why there needs to be regression, especially for Joe Ryan. I think that we're seeing him turn into his optimized version as opposed to going back to what he was before. I think we've seen him develop. I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, I guess I think that if anybody has another level, it's Kirby.
Yeah.
Because I could just see him dialing in some of what you're talking about. Like he fell in love with the 4-seam right early on, and he was like, he threw that too much, and people started anticipating and hitting homers off him. He has this splitter that he barely uses, but models like the curveball. The models like the curveball more than he does. He doesn't like to throw the curveball, but the models, they throw it more. So I just feel like there's something where it also he seems a little bit more savantish in adding a new pitch. Ryan had this whole thing where he had the 2 sliders, and it took him a while to figure out, oh, the sweeper's better, and like I need to work. Like it took him a little while to figure that out. I just feel like generally, if there was like percent of upside used like they're describing now, I'd say that, Ryan's probably at 90-ish, and Kirby's probably more like 75. I like the velo from Kirby. It's a little bit better for Kirby. I think the command, maybe a wash. Maybe Kirby's got better command. The injury component is just always the hardest. I want to say, well, Joe Ryan's healthy right now, and he's, got more innings and stuff, but they both have major injuries in the last year.
Ryan had the teres major second half of last year. Kirby missed the first 2 months of this year with shoulder inflammation. Something caused that inflammation. So I think they're pretty equal in terms of health grade. I think that's a fair assessment to say that like, Joe Ryan's pitching closer to that sort of skills max right now, and you can still see that next level from Kirby. If Kirby hits it, he becomes more valuable. If he doesn't, then I think Ryan kind of has him covered. So they're in the same tier as far as like ranking for keeper and dynasty purposes.
If you made me pick one, I think I take Kirby.
It seems like there's more ways for Kirby to make it work. Whereas Ryan, like you said, like he's just on that plateau right now.
This is good. He's really good. This is what he does. But other than like throwing the splitter more, or I don't know. I don't really have. Yeah. I look at his arsenal. I don't have anything. Oh, he threw harder for a little bit, but maybe that's how he got injured. So I'm not necessarily telling him to throw harder either. So
he's got a 4.33 ERA. Kirby does over the past calendar year. That's surprising to me. The guy should be in the threes consistently. By the way, who do you think leads the league in strikeout percentage over the past calendar year? Minimum 100 innings pitched. So we're just looking at starters.
Crochet?
No, he's 5th. Trevor?
Ryan.
No.
Joe Ryan.
He's 10th. 28.3%. He's 10th. Kirby, by the way, is 41st in K percentage of the past calendar year.
Scooble.
Yeah. Scooble's 3rd.
What's your innings minimum?
Charlie Morton.
It's 100, and it's not Charlie Morton. Now, Logan Gilbert, 34.1%.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Gilbert.
Yeah, Cole Reagan's is 2, Scooble's 3. They're the 3 in the 33% range and higher right now. It's amazing. Thanks a lot for that question, Sierra 6.
I think that's a little bit why, like, I love that he's sitting right next to George Kirby. Like, I love that their rapport, like, they're just always pushing each other to get better, and they're always talking pitching, and they're totally intense about it. And like, I think that Kirby gets some part of the. I mean, it's weird to say this, but I think Kirby gets some part of the credit for Gilbert.
Yeah,
like they've been talking forever. Like every time I have something from Gilbert, he's like, yeah. I was talking to Curbs about this.
Yeah, well, we'll see if Kirby can follow suit and get that K rate up the way Gilbert has for the last year or so now. Last question for today. Thiago Splitchange in the Discord wanted to know what changed in early June with Shane Baz's slider. Is the cutter an entirely different pitch, or did classification just shift? And if it's the same pitch, what makes Stuff Plus like it as a slider more than it likes it as a cutter?
It's a different pitch in terms of induced vertical break. He's given up 8 inches, so it doesn't break down as much. And for that, he's gotten, actually, it's really going up recently. It's on his last start, 93 miles an hour. From Baz on the cutter, up from 92, up from 91. The slider was coming in at 87, 80, 86. So, it's a different pitch. It's definitely a different pitch. It's harder. It's more of a cutter. In terms of why I think it's working for him, I think it's command. And, a lot of times we prefer, the stuff pitches, but you get into the big leagues and you're just like, well, if you look at the heat maps for where Shane Baz was throwing his slider, it was just like kind of middle, like a lot.
And up. He missed up a lot. It looks like he's just not comfortable. Okay, he's getting around it. It's a gyro slider classic, and it was just popping out of his hand a lot. And then the cutter, that went away completely. Like all the stuff up is gone, and he's getting it to that edge. So maybe he just feels better being on top of the ball because he's a ride guy. He's got a pretty true spin on everything he throws. That's why the curve comes off his fastball so well. So a cutter
so it hides better. It doesn't hide better with his fastball if it's up, as opposed to sort of middle up and it looks more like his fastball. And then lastly, location on the cutter is 100. Location plus on the slider was 72.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we've been talking about. That's exactly what we're talking about. So sometimes you just have to make you have to make a decision based on your command of the pitch rather than the stuff of it. There's definitely like when you're younger and in the minors, it's like, this is a better pitch by Stuff Plus. Throw this pitch, right? Then you get to the big leagues, and then it has to be like, well, sorry, it might be a better pitch in a vacuum, but like you're up here and you're hanging them. So,
and if you already have an out pitch, it's a wrinkle pitch anyways. He was just like, it wasn't one of his get him out pitches anyways. So like, that's not what you're trying to get from the pitch anyway. If you can't command it, that's what you need it to be. You don't need a bunch of swing and miss because you have your curveball. You're throwing that more anyways. So like you need something that you can throw in where you want to throw it.
Yeah. Hey, I want to see what the final 2 months brings for Boz. The fastball velocity up a little bit from where it was last year, the first year coming off Tommy John. This change, I think, could be pretty big for him. The strikeouts have come back a little bit. I think 68 Ks in his last 10 starts, covering 57 and a third innings. So I think what we see in the final 2 months and in 2026 might be even better than we've seen so far in 2025.
For what it's worth, this is not unprecedented. We have seen there are curveball guys who learn sliders like Max Fried and there's others, but even Gilbert. Gilbert was a curveball guy who finally learned a slider that worked for him. This is more Charlie Morton and Adam Wainwright. They never found a really good slider, but they settled in with a good cutter they could command.
Yeah, worked for those guys. So if that's the path Shane Boz goes down, it'll be we'll still be talking about guys. Still be talking about him 10 years from now or 15 years from now if that's what he's pulling off there. So
a really good curveball, I think, is really good for longevity. I don't know, you have to throw in health, but I just like those guys with those curveballs. You see them pitch until they're 43.
It's a secret. Usually it's the cutter early, but it's the curveball for the longevity, right? That's what we're looking for. All right, we're going to go. On our way out the door, a reminder, you can find us on Blue Sky. Trevor is I am Trevor May. Enos Saris. I'm DVR.bsky.social. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. If you got a question for a future episode, send those our way through the mailbag channel in Discord. It's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Friday.
Thanks for listening.